Padre Pio, the humble Capuchin friar who bore the stigmata of Christ for over 50 years, lived his entire life in union with the sufferings of Jesus. His life was filled with astonishing miracles, profound prophecies, and extraordinary encounters with souls from both heaven and earth. Yet, for all the wonders that marked his earthly pilgrimage, it was the final moments of his life that continue to move the hearts of the faithful most deeply. Padre Pio's last words, spoken as he crossed from this world into eternity, are a powerful testimony, not only of his sanctity, but of the profound mysteries he had glimpsed beyond the veil.
As Padre Pio's health declined in the final months of his life, those closest to him noticed a distinct change in his demeanor. Though his body grew weaker, his spirit seemed to grow even stronger, more serene, as if he could already see the gates of paradise opening before him. He bore his final sufferings with the same quiet heroism that had marked his entire life, never complaining, never asking for relief, only uniting his pain to the passion of Christ. Padre Pio believed deeply that every suffering, great or small, could be offered as a prayer for souls. And in his final hours, he poured out the last drops of his strength as an offering to God.
Those who cared for Padre Pio in those sacred final days often spoke of the extraordinary atmosphere that filled his room. It was as though heaven itself had descended into that humble monastery cell. Witnesses described a profound silence, not heavy with sorrow, but filled with an unexplainable peace, almost as if angels were keeping vigil. Padre Pio spent his final days in almost constant prayer, his hands, once bloodied from the visible wounds of Christ, clasped tightly around his beloved rosary. He never let it leave his side, even in his moments of deepest exhaustion. It was fitting, then, that his last words on earth would reflect the very heartbeat of his spiritual life. Padre Pio's voice, weak yet clear, uttered the words that he had carried in his heart through every trial and triumph. Jesus, Mary, simple words, yet infinitely profound. In these two names, Padre Pio found his refuge, his hope, his strength, and ultimately his victory over death. His final breath was not filled with fear or regret, but with the same trust and surrender he had lived throughout his entire life. In invoking the names of Jesus and Mary, Padre Pio was not merely calling out in devotion, he was placing his soul directly into the embrace of the Redeemer and his Blessed Mother. These final words encapsulate the essence of Padre Pio's entire earthly journey. Throughout his life, he had taught the faithful that the surest path to heaven is to remain close to the hearts of Jesus and Mary. He had tirelessly urged souls to pray the rosary daily, to meditate on the Passion of Christ, and to entrust themselves completely to divine mercy. In his final moment, Padre Pio practiced exactly what he had preached, showing us all that when our own hour comes, no words are more fitting, no plea more powerful than the sweet invocation of these holy names. Padre Pio's passing was not an end, but a continuation of his mission. Even as his earthly life concluded, his spiritual presence remained powerfully felt among the faithful. Those who were present at his death reported a sense of peace so deep that it transcended grief. They knew they were witnessing not the extinguishing of a life, but the final step of a soul being carried into glory. And as Padre Pio breathed his last, those two sacred names, Jesus and Mary, echoed not only in the room, but in the hearts of countless souls around the world who continue to draw strength from his example. Padre Pio's final words, Jesus, Mary, were far more than a simple utterance. They were the culmination of a lifetime of devotion, a final breath filled with meaning, purpose, and profound trust in the promise of eternal life. These two names carried him through every trial he had faced, From the physical torment of the stigmata, to the spiritual assaults of the enemy, to the heavy burden of bearing the sins and confessions of millions of souls who had sought his guidance. By calling upon Jesus and Mary in his last breath, Padre Pio was not merely closing his earthly chapter, he was opening his soul fully to heaven, offering everything he had and everything he was into the arms of divine mercy. For those familiar with Padre Pio's life, these last words were no surprise. He had long instructed the faithful to keep the names of Jesus and Mary constantly on their lips, especially at the hour of death. He taught that these names have power beyond measure, that they summon the very hosts of heaven, that they drive away the forces of darkness, and that they open the gates of paradise to the soul that pronounces them with faith and love. Padre Pio firmly believed that invoking Jesus and Mary in life and in death forms an unbreakable chain binding the soul to salvation itself. What is even more astonishing is the profound symbolism contained in these two names together. Padre Pio, throughout his ministry, had tirelessly preached the inseparable bond between Christ and his Blessed Mother. He viewed Mary not merely as a helper, but as the appointed gateway through which all graces flow. By invoking her name alongside her son's in his final moments, Padre Pio demonstrated this deep theological truth, that the Immaculate Mother is our advocate and our surest guide to Jesus. In his last breath, Padre Pio witnessed to the reality that Mary always leads us directly to Christ, and Christ always receives his children who come under her mantle of protection. The witnesses present at his deathbed were left deeply moved, not only by the holiness of the moment, but by the overwhelming peace that settled upon Padre Pio's frail body as he spoke those final words. Accounts tell of a serenity that seemed to defy the natural finality of death. His face, once marked by suffering, appeared peaceful and luminous, as if he had merely drifted into a restful sleep under the watchful gaze of heaven. Some described the atmosphere as almost otherworldly, charged with a sacred stillness, as though unseen angels had filled the room to escort his soul to its eternal reward. This peace, Padre Pio had always taught, is the inheritance of those who live their lives in total surrender to God. He had no fear of death, for he had already died to himself countless times over the course of his ministry. Through his constant sacrifices, his endless hours in the confessional, and his intense life of prayer and penance, Padre Pio had prepared his soul for this very moment. He often reminded the faithful that death is not the end for the Christian, but the beginning of true life. His own peaceful passing, accompanied by the names of Jesus and Mary, became a living sermon, a final teaching that speaks even more loudly today than it did in that quiet monastery cell. Moreover, his final words were not spoken for himself alone. Padre Pio, until his very last breath, thought of souls, of the millions who would one day look to his life for guidance and comfort. In that sacred moment, by pronouncing the names of Jesus and Mary, he left behind a universal message of hope, a roadmap for every believer facing the unknown. He showed us that no matter how heavy our burdens, no matter how dark the night, invoking these holy names draws heaven near and opens the way to eternal light. Padre Pio's death, marked by these final, powerful words, continues to echo through history. Pilgrims to his shrine, the faithful who pray at his tomb, and all who seek his intercession are drawn into the mystery of his passing. They are reminded that the power of Jesus and Mary is not confined to Padre Pio's life alone, but is offered to all who walk the path of faith. His final words, simple yet infinitely profound, remain a guiding light for every soul longing for heaven. As we continue to reflect on Padre Pio's final words, it becomes clear that they were not only a reflection of his personal devotion, but a final, urgent lesson for the world. Padre Pio had always believed that the hour of death is the most critical moment of life, the decisive threshold between time and eternity. He taught that how we live prepares us for how we will die, and how we die echoes through eternity. His own passing, so filled with grace and simplicity, became a mirror of his life's work, a life entirely consumed with love for Christ and his Blessed Mother. What is deeply moving is how perfectly his last words crowned the decades of his preaching. Padre Pio spent countless hours in the confessional, pleading with souls to return to God. He celebrated the Holy Mass with such profound reverence that even hardened skeptics were moved to tears. In every encounter, Padre Pio pointed souls toward the love of Jesus and the maternal care of Mary. By ending his earthly journey with their names on his lips, he sealed his life's mission with a final silent sermon. In life and in death, Jesus and Mary are enough. Witnesses to his final hours also noted a profound mystical atmosphere in his room. Some spoke of the faint scent of roses, long associated with the presence of Mary. Others described a sudden and unexplainable stillness, as if the entire monastery held its breath at the sacred moment of Padre Pio's departure. Though his physical heart, which had burned with zeal for God, finally came to rest, the spiritual fire of his love seemed to blaze all the brighter in the hearts of those who had gathered by his side. In that humble cell, heaven and earth seemed to touch. Padre Pio often spoke about the veil between this world and the next being thinner than we imagine, especially at the hour of death. He believed that those who lived closely united with God would experience not terror in their final moments, but the tender welcome of their heavenly companions. Padre Pio himself, ever the spiritual father, had prepared for this moment his entire life. He once said, "I am only passing through this world." His eyes were always set on eternity, and when his time came, he walked through death's door not with fear, but with the peaceful assurance of one returning home. Furthermore, Padre Pio's final words are a powerful reminder that death is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. In the Christian understanding, death is the doorway to eternal life, and Padre Pio's passing reminds us of the importance of living each day in preparation for that glorious transition. He had no regrets in his final moments because he had spent his entire life preparing for this encounter with the divine. He once counseled, "The time spent in glorifying God and serving Him is never lost." His last words serve as a call for each of us to live in such a way that when our time comes, we too can call upon the names of Jesus and Mary with confidence. What Padre Pio offered the world through his death is more than inspiration, it is direction. His life, and especially his final words, show us the path of surrender, the way of abandonment to divine providence. They remind us that no matter how heavy our sufferings, no matter how lonely our trials, we are never truly alone. Jesus and Mary are always near, waiting for our call, ready to strengthen us in life and welcome us in death. Padre Pio's example teaches us to trust unreservedly in this heavenly companionship. Even after his passing, Padre Pio's voice continues to resonate, not through grand speeches, but through the quiet power of his final prayer. In the silence of his last breath, he spoke for all of us who seek hope amid the shadows of this life. His parting words, Jesus, Mary, are a compass pointing directly to heaven. They are an invitation to place our trust, our fears, our hopes, and ultimately our very souls into the hands of the Redeemer and His Holy Mother. As we reach the final reflection on Padre Pio's last words, it becomes evident that his passing was not just a private moment of holiness, but a universal message sent to every soul seeking the road to heaven. Padre Pio's entire life had been a living sermon, his suffering a silent homily, and his death, crowned with the sacred names of Jesus and Mary, became the final chapter in his earthly testimony. Even now, decades later, his final breath continues to echo in the hearts of millions, reminding us that no matter the weight of life's burdens, there is refuge in calling upon these names of salvation. What makes this farewell even more profound is how Padre Pio's words transcend time. They are not bound by the walls of his monastery or the generation he lived in. Rather, they reach across history to touch the hearts of modern believers who are battered by doubt, fear, and the relentless noise of a world that often forgets God. Padre Pio's last prayer serves as a lighthouse in the storm, a beacon guiding us to safety. He teaches us that no matter how dark the night may become, the simple invocation of Jesus and Mary brings the light of heaven rushing to our aid. Padre Pio had always said that suffering is a gift when united to the cross of Christ. His final hours were a living proof of this truth. Even as his frail body faded, he embraced every moment of pain as a final offering to God for the conversion of souls. He once declared, "I am devoured by the love of God and the love of my neighbor." In his death, he gave the last full measure of both, his love for God shining in his invocation of Jesus and Mary, and his love for souls displayed in his surrender to God's perfect will. Padre Pio knew that this final act of trust would inspire countless souls to do the same. After his passing, countless miracles were reported through his intercession. The power of his final words seemed to ripple outward, stirring conversions, healing broken hearts, and drawing souls back to prayer. Pilgrims who visit his tomb in San Giovanni Rotondo often describe a tangible sense of peace and the urge to fall to their knees in prayer. Many testify that in their moments of deepest despair, simply whispering the words Padre Pio breathed in his final hour, Jesus, Mary, fills their hearts with unexpected courage and peace. His spiritual presence continues to comfort the faithful, reminding them that the communion of saints is alive and powerful. Padre Pio's death teaches us an eternal lesson. What matters most is not how long we live, nor how much we achieve in worldly terms, but how completely we unite our hearts to God. His simple final prayer is a masterful summary of the Christian life. He teaches us that our ultimate goal is not success or comfort, but union with Jesus in the loving arms of Mary. Padre Pio's last words are like the final chord in a symphony of faith, resonating long after the music has faded, inviting every soul to join the same song of trust and surrender. As we contemplate Padre Pio's earthly farewell, we are left with a clear, powerful invitation to live as he lived, to love as he loved, and to die as he died, with our hearts fixed on heaven and our lips filled with the names of Jesus and Mary. His life was a torch passed down to us, and his death was the moment he placed that burning light into our hands. It is now our turn to carry it forward, illuminating our path and the path of others with the same trust, the same devotion, and the same undying hope. And so, as we remember this holy saint and his final breath, let us whisper his last words in our own lives, not only at the moment of our departure, but every single day. Jesus, Mary. Let these names be our strength in weakness, our courage in fear, our light in darkness, and our promise of eternal life. Padre Pio has shown us the way. Now it is up to us to follow it.